Okay.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
The agenda of today, of course, is about the fire service agreement between the city and the county, and I'll try to do this the best I can. We'll start off with our problem statement. Identify the areas of concern for the city and county, each fire department, and our citizens. The history is a brief summary of how we got here, and our current situation is an overview of where we are today relating to statistics and financials. Options are term identify options for remedy, recommended actions, how resolutions can be accomplished, and call to action at a time for leaders to rise to the challenge. First, we'll talk about the city, fire service, county, and the citizens. Our concerns: the city needs to be equitably compensated for the service provided to the county, and the county needs to ensure that it's receiving the service that best serves its citizens. Fire service needs to ensure that the public safety is not jeopardized, and the citizens deserve our best efforts to protect them. There has not been a ratified FSA or fire service agreement since 2010, and the city taxpayers have continued to fund services in our county fire district. We estimate that at $2.2 million per year. How did we get here? The SFD has been established for more than 30 years, and it has district includes considerable territory outside the city municipal limits. As most of you know, we have a lot of pocket areas where the county is directly right into the city. So we actually go past county to get to city. Just a little thing there. It hasn't been unchanged except for annexation, and the original FSA between the city and the county was a call-based formula. The funding formula of the old agreement was very complicated and difficult to calculate and understand, led to many disputes between the city and the county and other volunteer corporations. How did we get here? In 2005, a new fire service agreement between the city and the county was approved. Funding formula was simply a flat rate that's equal to all fire department funding in the county. The county agrees to make certain payments to the city and our 3 volunteer corporations, same as all other fire departments in the county. 3-year term with an automatic renewal clause unless either party gave notice of wish to terminate.
I should have done that.
How did we get there? Or how did we get here? I'm sorry. In 2007 of December, the city notified the county of its desire to terminate the agreement on July 1 of 2008. A decision was made to extend it for 1 year to June 30th of 2009. And then it was extended again for 1 year, June 30th, 2010. And finally, it was extended again for additional 6 months, terminating on December 31st of 2010. 2007, the city has requested a number of meetings and or discussions to staff level with new negotiation process. Each attempt has failed and provided no results or outcomes. Expired FSA continues to be honored by the city and the county. SFD responds to just under 63% of all total fire calls in Wycomico County, with the fire calls being at 2,817, and that's total, by the way, 1965 in and 852 out of city limits. And the rest of the county is 1,675. SFD responds to 66.71% of all EMS calls in the county. With that being said, we run 8,348 EMS calls, 5,579 in and 2,769 out. And the rest of the county fire departments run about 4,100 calls, EMS calls. We protect 56.58%, which is 56,102 of the county's population of 99,169. And we protect 58.38%, which is the county's total asset taxable base of $7 million, and we protect, that's $7 billion, and we protect $4 billion of it. The city receives only 23.87%, which is $956,000 of the county's total funding to fire and EMS at $4,003,000. And we receive exactly the same stipends as every other fire department in the county. The following options have been presented to the county. formula based on all calls for fire service, formula based on current fire department expenses for provision of service for county portion of our district, and formula based on the excess tax base of the fire district, or reduction of the Salisbury Fire Department district. A call-based formula is a calculating cost for service provisions in the county. It's a model for pay per call response to the county, fair to the taxpayers of the city, and fair because a heavy call volume, of course, necessitates greater resources of equipment, facilities, and personnel, and wear and tear of all of our vehicles. As you're all aware of how much our money is spent on our wear and tear of our vehicles. Could it apply just to the Salisbury Fire District, or it could apply to all county fire districts? Based on mathematical calculation to include equipment, apparatus, and personnel expenses, we use the FEMA equipment and apparatus rates independent model. The personnel expenses calculated using real salary and benefits data. The FEMA rate plus personnel costs, an engine or a tanker, truck, whatever you want to call it, is $175 an hour. Fixed operating cost at $573.92 an hour for a total of $748.92 an hour. The EMS rate for FEMA is $32.50 an hour, and a fixed operating cost of $582.65 an hour for a total of $615.15 an hour. Expense protects the county fire and EMS service. Fire expense, you do 748.92 times the 852 fire calls that we run in the county district is 638,079, and the EMS is 615.15 an hour times the 2,769 EMS calls we run in the county equals out to $1.7 million for a total expense of just over 2.3 million. Sorry if I'm going too fast. Model was based on expensive in the fire department annual operating budget to calculate overall cost for services in the county portion of our fire district. Dependent on using the FD annual budget to develop an expense model for cost services. It reflects a true cost for service to each household in the district and provides a true representation of cost services in the county portion of the district. The model is very complicated. Okay, this is the good one here. Financial evaluation for the city providing fire and EMS services in the county in 2012. The gross fire expense was $1,166,917.28, and the gross EMS expense was just over $2.6 million for a total of $3.8 million. The fire revenue from the county is $500,000. EMS revenue is $456,000 from the county, that is. $456,000, and the EMS building revenue is $675,859 for a total of $1.63 million. Net expense from the county, or for county protection, is just over 2.2. Where we come up with those numbers is each one of our stations 1, 2, and 16 get a stipend of $125,000 each, and our spec ops gets $125,000 each. Then we also get funding for our 3 EMS units at $456,000, which is $152,000 each. The accessible tax base formula is the creation of a new fire and EMS service tax for all Wycomico County, and designated to fund each fire department more equitably for their services, based on the amount of accessible base protected within each fire district. The new tax model based on revenue generated at 15 cents per hundred of excess valuation, revenue solely for fire and EMS services, $10,564,021. 50% taxable base for fixed costs equals the split 14 companies, and that's the 14 fire departments, at $377,286. What that means is each 14 fire departments in the county would receive $377,286, which is a pay raise for all of them. 50% taxable base for variable operating costs based on response to accessible base in each district.
You don't mean that literally pay raise. You just mean a raise.
I'm sorry, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just checking.
As you can see, Salisbury runs 58% of the call volume, and the total asset valuation protected. Other fire departments run 42%. We protect more asset value than all other areas combined, and the higher the assessed value protected, the more calls for service. The more calls for service, of course, the higher expense provided for services. Sorry. This is probably not easy to see. We'll concentrate on column A and B. A is where we the first one will be based formally on the 50% of total. That's where each department would receive $377,286. And column B is where each department would receive more money, depending on the value of the 50% of the total. As you can see, Salisbury, I'll just do the 3 stations, 1 and 2. 1 would receive just under $900,000, and Station 2 would receive just under $800,000, and 16 would receive just under $1.4 million. You want to study that for a minute, or it's a lot there?
You're going to share this with us electronically?
Yes. Options we can do: reduction of the Salisbury Fire Department district, if necessary, without a new FSA. And recommended actions. Where do we go from here? City County Executive Leadership Meeting. Strategic meeting to establish a move forward position and a timeline. Negotiation process where the city and county teams meet to present and defend options. Implementation, action steps to implement agreement. Evaluate process, monitor progress, and total corrective action as needed within the parameters of the agreement. Call to action. Everyone must engage to lead the change. Elected officials, must engage and be solution leaders, and our fire service leaders must offer professional expertise. Citizens must determine the level of fire and EMS protection they want and deserve, and everyone must acknowledge and accept the real issues facing our county and city. I'll try to answer any questions there is.
No, my questions are only on what was in our packet and the presentation about the money being needed for the new one of these.
Okay. If there aren't specific questions about Chief Scott's presentation, I've got a few comments that I'd like to make, and then we'll bring up Dr. Cohen from TriData. So I want to thank Assistant Chief Scott for taking the time to join us and for skipping the trip to Florida, for making this presentation.
Short straw.
Yeah, it happens to all of us. So I think you've done a good job of setting the stage for what everybody here is either intimately familiar with in some cases, is familiar with through the media and through council conversations in other cases. So I think we're on stage 2 of the recommended actions. I really, I think we are at that place now. We're at the negotiation process. Under Mayor Ireton's leadership, we came together and had a series of meetings with the county over the last year or so. And I think we came to the conclusion that we stood apart on a few variables. And we needed to find common ground on those variables in order to enter into an updated agreement. So I want to outline those variables and get you thinking about those as we move forward. So the first is, how do we determine the value of the service rendered to the citizens? And what I mean by that is, what measure do we use and what process do we use to determine what we see as the value of this service? Not just provided outside of the city limits, but the value of the entire service, and explicitly what portion of that can be applied to the services provided outside of the city limits. Second, what is the value of the service rendered? And so this process that we're getting ready to undertake, or that we're suggesting be undertaken through TriData, is step one and answers step two. So what is the value of the service? What do we think that this service being provided to the non-city taxpayers for a service that we have agreed as a corporation to provide to the members of our corporation, the citizens of Salisbury, that we see as worth providing outside of those limits, and what is that value? The third question is, to what geographic areas do we ultimately provide the service? And that speaks to something that Assistant Chief Scott said, which is we could change the borders. And we've talked about it. We've talked about it at each of the meetings, and it's something that could happen. I think if you listen to what County Executive Culver says, he would like to see us retain primacy of the urban core, of the metro core, inside the bypass is what we frequently say. And I understand that, and I think that makes perfect sense. It's totally logical. But that may mean some slight movements in geographic boundaries of the service area. Number four, with those factors considered, with all those factors considered, what is the amount of the service that is owed, or what is the amount of money that is owed for the service being provided? So once you got the geography figured out and you've already valued the service, then what's the amount? What's the dollar amount? What is the bottom line? Number five, what amount will we agree upon? I notice that that's a separate variable because I think we could recognize that we might not accept that number, or the county might not be able to afford that number or be willing to pay that number. So we got to acknowledge that there's a fifth variable to talk about it. Number six, over what period of time will the city and county agree to a service agreement? Is this a 20-year agreement, a 10-year agreement, a 4-year agreement? What is it? And then number seven, when will we begin to implement the agreement? Will this be tomorrow? Will it be July? Will it be July of next year? And again, I think we can have a firm opinion and strong stance, and so can the county, and we've got to find that point at which we agree on each of those variables in order to enter into a new agreement. And so in order to answer number two, we believe, the city believes, that it has an answer to number one and number two. And we've got a presentation that articulates that. But we've got a partnership, and we need to acknowledge that partnership with the county and find an updated number and an updated answer that we both agree on, or else we're not going to be able to move forward. And that brings us to other conversations that are less pleasant and comfortable. And so let's focus on finding an answer that brings us to common ground. So with that, Dr. Cohen, I'd like you to come forward if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
And make your presentation. And I am not even needed for this piece. Why don't you sit here and I'm going to sit there, and Assistant Chief Scott can stay here to answer questions.
Oh,
Does that
okay.
work? Or do you have a
Yeah, he needs
presentation?
this.
All right, you need this one?
I'm trying to get out of it.
All right.
It's not cooperating. At all.
So while they're setting up,
Yeah.
I'm assuming that what we're gonna hear is a methodology, proposed methodology for evaluation of the current situation.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's not working.
That's not what's in our packet.
It's how we plan to do our study.
Part of
The
which is figuring
methodology.
out the methodology.
Okay, yeah. Very good.
The methodology, said methodology, I meant what they were going to do for us,
I think it's the other slot.
It is?
not the solution,
There you
not
go.
which one they were gonna pick.
Right.
Now,
I thought you meant
Yeah.
where's a methodology that they're going to use to come up with these numbers
The
that
methodology for how they're gonna analyze the situation. How they're gonna help us get to the final point.
maybe I'm asking you the same question you're asking me,
Right.
but I'd like to know what their methodology is going to be getting to this very large spreadsheet and the maps and what they're doing to use it. Are they
Yes.
using GIS the same way we use GIS? I mean, it's $30,000, Jack.
Right, oh no, that's why I wanna hear in detail what they're.
Dr. Cohen.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you, Mayor, Council President. Thank you very much for allowing TriData to be part of this. I'm going to present to you some of the basically the same information that we sent you in our proposal, but I'll be able to, and I'll do that quickly so I can really ask questions because it sounds like they do have that there. I'd like to thank Chief Scott. That was very informative for me and gave me a preface to what we should be expecting when we come here. Before we actually start with everything, I want everybody to realize, and I know it's important to understand that we are expecting to, if chosen, to do this presentation, this study as an equal partnership between the city of Salisbury and Wycomico County. And it's important for us to understand that, and it will be important for how we will, the study can be conducted in an organized fashion. So I wanted you to know ahead of time. I know in the critique we got from the original proposal that Chief Hoppus did, that was something emphasized, and I'd like you to know that we listened. Just to tell you a little bit about TriData, and I'll just do this very little. We were founded by Phil Shainman. He was one of the first associate administrators of the United States Fire Administration. He's an engineer by trade. We've been going for 34 years. We've done over 210 studies, over 25 on what we call joint services, consolidations, mergers, all of those things in between. We have some unique research methodologies that really puts theories into practice and puts data analysis, thus the name TriData, at work. And we have done this basically for EMS, fire, and for fire prevention, community risk reduction types of situations. As the proposed project manager, I was a division chief, did my career with the Baltimore County Fire Department, working my way up to the rank of division fire chief. I also started as a volunteer, and I'm a life member of a volunteer fire company in that area. So I understand that from 2 points of view. Educationally, I also have a PhD in healthcare administration, and I'm board certified by the American College of Healthcare Executives. I'm also a designated chief fire officer, and I teach for the National Fire Academy in their executive fire officer program, along with doing consulting. And also when it comes to us and getting people working as teams, Mayor, you plucked the heartstring for me. I also do mediation and arbitration, and I'm president of the Maryland Council for Dispute Resolution. So I come with those skills, having to use them many times. That's how I built on my career as a consultant. Besides being personally a lifelong Marylander, we have done a lot of studies in Maryland in these departments, a variation. Many of them were comprehensive studies, some of them were not. Were just very specific things, but we've done some of the counties and have looked a lot of these counties who have not the same as Wycomico County, but really have some similarities and many differences. As we tell everybody when we talk about fire and EMS systems, if you've seen one fire and EMS system, you've seen one fire and EMS system. It's very difficult to say I can copy something from somebody else and bring it here to do that. So even within our own experiences, one of those things we do not do is try to bring things that were good for our original communities to your community, because it just doesn't work that way. And we have to understand that. We're fortunate to have some very good and talented consultants. Michael Iacona, he's a retired fire chief of Flagstaff, Arizona, and also was fire chief in Orange County, Florida, which includes the city of Orlando, Walt Disney World, though they're separate departments. and he has an excellent public administration background. But probably the most notable thing about Mike is he's a graduate of Salisbury State and spent much of his youth here at that area. So it will be coming home for him to work with us. Robin Davis is an emergency manager and has worked for us for quite a few years, and his specialty is GIS and data analytics. As one question was asked already, will we be using GIS? Will we be using up-to-date measurement? Absolutely, we will. And as we've said in our proposal, we will accept any of the data and the analysis that you already provide, or that anything we get from the county, but understanding that the old term of trust but verify is still very appropriate here. And I think to get confidence with people, we really need to do that. Even if it means that all of the data and the analysis provided by the city is absolutely okay. We can, as a third party, be able to verify that. We have one more person is Doug Helfman. He's a certified public accountant, and he'll be assisting me with some of those financial matters that I know are very important to everyone. We talked about the first aspect that we understand. The second part that we understand is that equitable reimbursement from Wicomico County to the city is extremely important. And as I explained at my meeting with the county, in a way it's going to become much simpler, but in a way it's going to become much more complicated. And hear me out for just a second here with this example. Technology is doing wonderful things for us, as we know. It may make the absolute provision of care and service better and easier, but it will not make the background and the administration of it. It's available now, but eventually all of the standards for public safety communication centers will be having a big map with everybody, every fire and EMS unit on that map. And as people come in to tour their 911 center, someone will inevitably ask the question, can you show me my house on that map? And of course, a good ComTech will very quickly bring up that person's house, and they will basically come to see that, oh, that's the closest firehouse. Is that the unit that responds to my location? And the very easy part of it is, it should be. However, the very difficult part of it is, while the public is erasing those lines and making those demands of us, they want quick service, the closest, qualified, etc. We can't do that completely in government because of what it costs to provide service, who is legally responsible to provide service, where the fiduciary responsibility is. So coming up with those key formulas to get accurate and effective rates for reimbursement becomes more complicated and even more important, because the provision of service is going to happen. We believe is that the public won't let people take a pass on it. And so it's coming up, it's so important for us to do that. We do understand that the volunteer service in Wicomico County is a strong presence, and also in the city, and that presence is still desired by the citizens of the city and Wicomico County. Also understanding that, according to the National Volunteer Fire Council, that the number of volunteers putting their time into fire and EMS is reducing approximately 8% per year. And while it might not sound like a lot to you, 3 years and 24%, or 4 years and 32%, that means the beginning of a political term and the end of a political term can see a very broad change in your fire and EMS service. One that that we all have to be attuned to when doing that. We're looking at the current and future provisions of high quality EMS to the citizens, how much more complicated that's getting, the expansion of our scope of practice in emergency medical services, and also, again, public expectation, plus expectation from our healthcare community, not just in EMS, but in the community, the expectation that our community has, and that much of what we do when it comes to stroke, acute myocardial infarction, and trauma affects the downstream of healthcare and will eventually be part of some of the reimbursement patterns to healthcare. And also, it's going beyond the city and county fire service agreements. Anybody can come up with things to minimally do things, but part of what we like to do is not want you to have to come back to the drawing board every single year or every single time to do this, that at least the formulas and at least the mindset is all heading in the same direction, whether it's time, it's elections, or things like that, and making our study a usable document. There we go. We had proposed a 3-phase study, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, just to clarify a few things here. We understand that from the data and the information that I've received is that most of the interest is in the first phase of the study, which is basically where are we now, both from a financial situation, but also socially, technically, educationally, environmentally, and also politically and legally. Where is everything right now? Where do we stand? We understand that Salisbury has a lot of the data, much more sophisticated from the volunteer agencies, but that data tends to be available. I have to tell you that whenever I work with volunteer agencies, a couple things come to mind. The first one is the lay public tends to be concerned or think that financing is the biggest issue, where we clearly find that while it is a pertinent issue, human capital is clearly the issue for our volunteer services today, whether it's the fire and EMS service or whether we're looking at Lions clubs and Loyal Order of Moose and those clubs. Walk into a meeting and take a look, and it doesn't take long to see what are the ages of people who are committing to volunteer services. That doesn't mean giving up on it. It means coming at it possibly with a different approach. The second phase would look at further options for the future and basically consider anything from consolidation, automatic aid, cooperative agreements, basically things that can be agreed to and where consensus can be reached. If necessary, also, reaching a whole section on reaching consensus and an implementation plan. And one of the reasons that we provide this is, and make it available, is anybody can write these things down and give them to you. It's actually getting them to work. And just to paraphrase what I heard the mayor say, and that is getting there from here. Less about all the technical stuff and saying, all right, we're going to march, we're going to camp, or are we going to fight? Or agree, hopefully. And that's what the third phase would really, if chosen, would be from everybody. I know price was mentioned. The first phase would basically be this cost split between the county and the city. And if hopefully that all or some of all of basically everybody's happy and thinks that we did a fine job for them, moving on, we'd be happy to move on to the next phase. But if not, it can stop right there and move on. There's options to say, let's stop right here and come back in 6 months and see what we're going to do. We need to do this. So all of those options are on the table here. I was asked to become a little more detailed in phase 1, and basically I'll review that just very quickly. The first task is going to be the collection of data and review of background information. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's difficult. And I've been assured by our Wycomico County leadership that getting data from the 911 center with those types of things will be easy or easier, maybe more challenging for some of the financial data, and hopefully just everybody can cooperate the best they can. From my perspective, I don't come at it from an argumentative point of view or that type of view. I come at it from a more humble point of view, saying, if you want the best out of us, getting us the most information to work for will allow us to do that. And that's all I can ask of people, usually. Along with our data collection, we usually come and do a triage of issues visit. Now this visit, this is the first few days where we sit with the leadership of the project from each jurisdiction. With the knowledge that equal partnership between the city and the county, we would ask that a project manager be appointed from both. And it doesn't have to be the highest ranking person or somebody. It's the people who are knowledgeable and have the time to commit to this. And often that might not be the top, but maybe somebody who's available. Sometimes it is that person. We're going to look at the shape files and the GIS files for coverage and demand. We're going to also look not only at the coverage, but what's the demand and how's that going to change. We don't know exactly what's going to happen in the city or the county, but I can tell you that multi-layered health facilities, 55 and over, to assisted living, to nursing care in the same facility, are becoming very popular. And what we do know about that is if we see it down the road, I can't tell you who's going to build it and when, but what I will tell you with some great ease is that one EMS call per person per year on average. And I can cite Contra Costa, California, and several other places that it might not be everybody, but if you have a 200-person facility with all those levels, you're looking at a significant call volume change there. And again, we'll take a look at that in our risk section of risk and demand, along with some of the projections for future demand. We're also going to take a look at cost apportionment, and I was very impressed with the level of detail that I saw from Chief Scott. And basically, that's one of the ways to do things using some other models that basically surround valuation, demand, and those types of population, all of that being put together. Also looking out for the variables of population changes. While we don't think it's hard to fathom if somebody says there's a 2% change in population, but a couple of years, that's 8%, and that's significant, even in smaller cities. But in a nice sized county with a population, if 8% has meaning, it's not just a mathematical number that says, oh yeah, okay, 8%, no big deal. After we do these tasks, what we do is we publish a draft report to the project managers. The project managers choose who to send these out to. Some send them to lots of people, some send them to a very few. We collate the response, and then we will take and construct a final report to be sent to you. Along that, we usually come up with a presentation to whichever body the project management team wants it presented to. There are usually two choices. Some like the presentation between the final, or between the draft and the final. Some do afterwards. We have no preference. We yield to our clients in which to do that. And so those are more of the details of the first phase of this, which is what most people are talking about. After that, if we go into phase 2 or into phase 3, we'll be able to take a closer look at this is what we did, now it's time to do this, or it isn't time to do this. And we can get more particular should we need to reapproach the council. And we'd be asked to reapproach the council to continue on from there. Each of you I know have much of the information because it was sent out, and we are available to discuss this further. Mr. Mayor, Council President, thank you for your time, and at your discretion, and questions can be answered.
Questions?
Well, let me ask this, if I may, Mr. President. Dr. Cohen, one of the things that you did today was made a presentation, similar presentation to the county council.
Yes.
That was at a different time than we thought it was going to be, so I wasn't able to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share any information you gathered from that meeting, or any conclusions from that meeting?
I have to say that honestly, I got the impression that the county council was really interested in this and willing to do that, and basically echoing some of what you've said, Mayor, is that they're ready. Time is now to move on this. What depth this study will go to, there's probably we probably need to talk it out a little more to see exactly how far into this we want to go. But I think I heard a consensus on at least the first phase of this.
So if I may, let me ask this of the county administrator, Mr. Strasburg. Did you hear a consensus to move forward from the county council, or did they come to that conclusion today?
I did, Jake, and our funding is in place.
Yes.
So we're prepared to
Move forward with your end. Okay. I figured that's important information, and I didn't know that until now, so thank you. Mr. President.
Are you pointing at me?
Well, you look like you're about to.
I was making fun of Mira because his phone rang.
You're supposed to look at somebody else like it's their
Is there?
fault.
Are you making me go first for the obvious
No.
reason? Oh, okay. Just wonder if there was anybody
I'm
else.
just starting and going around the table.
That's why they put me here. What information, if you look at the proposed work statement, I mean, literally, it's city, SFD, 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 SFD. What information is being asked to be provided by? What information could you get from the county that you're not going to get from the GIS information that you're going to be going to the 911 center
I
to
have
get?
not looked at that GIS information yet to see if it's countywide or it's just for the city. Because this report also, we're supposed to make some recommendations looking at it countywide. So,
So you're saying that you don't know that the GIS system in this county handles the 911 calls for both the city and the county.
I don't know. I have not been given given the information yet.
All right.
And if it doesn't, for the county side, we will do it.
It does. At the end of your triage of issues, you're going to give these things to project leaders, and I guess what my question is to the project leaders: who do we expect to be the project leaders for both of them, and will those documents be made public?
So we haven't had that conversation, if I may. We haven't had that conversation at the city level, but it would be my assumption that it would be Chief Hobbs as the most knowledgeable individual on the provision of fire service in the city.
you brought up the number of senior living calls, and I don't know whether or not you were using that as just an example. Is that something that you're seeing in our comprehensive plan through that there'll be a whole bunch more of these coming?
Well, that's what we're going to find. That's what we're going to find out. We're going to go beyond just talking to fire department and EMS personnel, but talking with city and with county personnel and planning divisions, finance, those places, so we can get a better, a richer and thicker understanding of all the things that are happening, both in the city of Salisbury and in Wycomico.
Which that's probably more as looking at what's reflective nationwide as we build more of those facilities or even some of those 55 and older neighborhoods.
Absolutely, and I can. I'm not confident of a whole lot of things when it comes to this, but one of the things I'm confident about, I saw it out in California. I saw it right here in Virginia. We can show you a GIS map, and there'll be a very, very dark red circle or square right where those types of facilities are, even in areas where there's not a lot of call volume. So I can pretty confident, if we find those and we look at construction patterns and times and things, it will allow us to help make projections into the future. With that, we do use, without going into the exact statistics, we do use forecast modeling, multiple forecast models coming up with high and low predictions for the future, and checking them against other models. We do that in a very sophisticated manner.
Will phase... All right, let me ask the question this way. Phase 1 will get us to a point where numbers are presented that are valid, correct?
Yes.
It answers question 2.
That answers question 2.
Variable 2.
My concern is that without a guarantee that we're going to do phase 2, and I mean phase 3 is obviously the step off of phase 2. And then you get into the, well, I'm getting your stages and phases mixed up, and I apologize.
He's talking Jake stage.
Yeah, I'm
2.
talking Jake stage 2. No, I'm talking phase 1 in your work.
And
The
variable 2.
20,000 and then the
Right.
30,000.
But I don't want to. What I don't want to see happen is that we get whatever the monetary value is, and someone says, "Well, I mean, if this isn't going to be binding, if this isn't going to go down into phase 3, where there's obviously a very capable and well-credentialed mediator in the room right now that says this is what's going to happen. I'm just going to say we couldn't do it." So my question to you is, do we? I'm a little worried that if we took the cost of what Chief Hoppus did, which the assistant chief showed us a little while ago, that was probably $30,000 worth of work, with all of the information that he had to go through in the GIS. So I'm concerned that if we, in the spirit of compromise, we agree to go ahead and do this again, and we get to that point where it says what it is it says, are we just going to get that sigh and not do it? I mean, this is truly the concern, that we can't continue to be in a situation where when we ask for tax fairness, we have to go through all of this while the other people get to run whole campaigns on tax fairness and don't have to be nickeled and dimed.
Well, let me ask a question back,
Okay.
because I wasn't involved in the negotiations, you were at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Was the issue a number, or was it theoretical? Was it the number? Was the number the stumbling block? The data, the final number, whatever that was that the stumbling block, or was there an esoteric discussion?
I would imagine that from my point of view, there were stumbling blocks, 4 blocks. And if it wasn't the money, it was you're going to change the boundaries, because I mean that's talked about in here. I mean it is talked about in phase 2 and phase 3, that really looking at where your population's going to go. What I don't want to happen is this gentleman go through $60,000 worth of work for someone out there to say, well, one fire company, whether it be us or some of the other 14, say, I don't want to do this. Because then we have spent this money to be exactly back where we were before. I would prefer that we have a commitment. The only way this is going to happen is through a mediation process. There's no doubt about it. The firemen are going to have to get in a room, and they're going to have to decide on what their boundaries are, and it's going to have to be agreed to when they walk out. If it doesn't happen that way, then it's going to come back here, and we're going to have to make that decision. Go ahead.
I think part of
Add on to
that,
that.
part of that's going to depend on if we get down to the point about which direction we go. If we do the valuation one where it's the 15 cents per whatever, that's probably going to have to go to a referendum to county voters, because that would actually, or at least to Annapolis, because you're adding something to their tax bill.
Yeah, that's cool.
Now, honestly, I think that's probably the most fair way to go, because then it actually itemizes it to every taxpayer in the county. This is what you pay for fire service, and, just like we do for water, sewer. It varies it down to the value of that property, and everybody pays the same percentage for fire coverage. Where right now we know that's not happening. I think that would actually take the politics out of it, except for the taxpayers having to decide how they're going to pay for fire service. And then if it doesn't pass at the referendum, then we have to have a backup plan. Then do we reduce the boundaries, or do we go the other method, which is then the negotiation between the county council and the city, and then we're back to square one.
Yeah,
it's
very difficult for me, and I say this with all due respect to the county executive and the county administrator sitting here, is to read the state of the county address that there's more money now in surplus, and
Well,
they get to put out a statement that says there's more money in surplus, and we're sitting in a room being asked for $30,000 to get a study back that shows us that city taxpayers are paying for 65% of the county. And that has to be, and that's why this is so important, because, Mr. Mayor, with all due respect to you and the county executive, we've been asked to come up with more money that's going to go to a GIS system that I'll bet you $30,000 comes back and says the exact same thing this does, or even worse. So, I'll get accused of demagoguing the situation, but it's still the people that I represent that are paying for the people who don't live inside the city limits. So if this is where we're going, I think we need something more than a guarantee that, well, we might get the phase 1 and that might be it, because my recollection is when the county gets information that they don't like, they're just going to say they don't agree with it, and it's going to sit on the shelf. So I would prefer, if we're going to spend this, that we get a guarantee that we're going to go through all these phases.
Could I finish my question? Because my question was the current mayor. This is good. The current mayor was part of the negotiation as well. Could you elaborate in terms of the question relative to
Stumbling blocks?
Yeah.
Sure. I think the former mayor is right. There are more than one stumbling block.
so
And here's the stumbling block that this addresses. The numbers that we've used are ours. They're our numbers, and there are two parties in this conversation, and so it's very difficult to move forward in good faith when the numbers have been created and are favorable to one half of the parties at the table. I have a couple thoughts here. We're a municipal corporation, we're different from a county, and we're both local government entities under state law, but we are different. Every single one of us is a county taxpayer, just as we're a city taxpayer. It is not the same as any service provided to any service that the county provides to city taxpayers, they have to provide, or the state has to provide. You know, any service that we choose to provide as a city is either in place of or on top of those services, those base services that are provided. We are different. This is a case where we have a service that we're providing outside of the borders. I see a couple courses of action. One, we can sit at the table, move forward with this study where we have a third party presenting information, and we can all negotiate around that information that is coming from and through a third party. Or we can say, you know, well, we don't like the results of that and we're unwilling to move forward. And then the end result of that is what? Do we continue to provide a service when we tried this path, when we tried to work together to come to this path that uses third party information, uses negotiation, uses mediation, and continue to provide that service at a loss to our citizens? And I think none of us will be comfortable with that. But here we are with an opportunity, I think, to bring everyone around the table around a shared not only goal of equity and parity, but also a shared method of practice through Dr. Cohen and his group. I also think that there are two courses of action with respect to phases 2 and 3, the mediation, the negotiation, variables 3 through 7, however you want to look at it, whatever you want to call it. There are two courses of action. One, we can handle it ourselves and come back to the table after we've got that data, the result of phase 1. That's what I think we've proposed here. But I think if we each invested $15,000, the county and the city, and we come back to the table and we think, whew, it's going to be tough to find common ground, but we agree we want to move forward, I don't think it would be an unreasonable investment to say $12,500 more gets us the rest of the way. I think we can come back to this table and have that conversation one more time, and I'm willing to bring you that budget amendment if we come to that situation. Your least favorite 2 words.
Well, that leads to the question of the timeline and the deliverables. Because, let's say each entity gets it on their agenda. It's got to be read. It's got to be passed, the whole bit. And then the first one is 4 months. 3 months, we would submit a draft report in 3 months and allow 2 weeks for now. Just oddly enough, if you go ahead and do that, you're right to the budget deadlines for the city and the county. So my hope was that it would be done before budget time, so that if we were going to do something, if there was some compensation or some change coming our way, that we could budget for a smaller area, a bigger area, money coming in from somewhere, a check being delivered from somewhere. I don't have confidence that that happens. I have confidence in everything that the mayor just said. I just want to be clear about that. But I think that gets us past budget time for this year. So now we're through FY17 and we're headed towards. So if you take just my 6 years and the $13.2 million every year at 2.2, and you add in another 2 years, the first 2 years of the new mayor's term, there's an urgency and a responsibility that I think that we have to say that these phases, if we're going to pay for them, have to be adhered to or have to be reached, or the groups have to get to those phases. If I'm going to eat another $4.4 million over the next 2 years and spend another 30 and then another 12.5 and then whatever the little bit was for the last phase, wanting everyone in the room is great, and we can get them there. But if we don't demand that something comes out of that room, then we've just thrown $30,000 after 16 point something million.
No, I hear what you're saying, Jim. But the other side of it is, if you look at the history, we haven't had an agreement how long? What happened to all those years that we couldn't do anything? Now, and I'm going to, if I may, in my experience, I would think, and this is just my experience, I think we're going to come up pretty close to what the numbers show, give or take. But if it allows us, and there's an agreement that that's the number, then I believe the negotiations can be simpler. Because at least you agreed on a number. How you get to the final or the end point, that remains to be seen. But 4 months to get into this, and I understand, but I also understand the money that I paid in before that we're not gonna get back. We're not. I have a doubt. My only doubt is, I've dealt with consultants before. Don't take this the wrong, because usually what they do, usually, in my experience, they massage, they check, they come up, and they spit out and give you back what you give them. That may be all we need. And that's fine if we're gonna spend whatever we're gonna spend for phase one. I just wanna move it. We've gotta get off this point. We cannot allow this to go on and on and on and on and on. And I think it's reasonable if we can, as much as I hate to say it, I think that we need to come up with everybody's number before we get off square one. I don't think we're going to accomplish anything unless we come up with what that number is. And there is a
Right.
difference.
Do you think maybe we should ask the county to use GIS the way that we did to come up with their number?
Well, and that's what I was trying to get through with, is there going to be a single methodology
Right.
that is used
Mhm.
that is agreed upon, then it becomes a moot point, because we are going to come up with our number.
I'm just, we get to the triage part and we sit down with the city and county project leaders. What happens if the impasse is right there? Their number says $650,000 that we owe them, and ours says it's $2.2 million that they owe us. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but if it's $1 different either way, it's different.
That won't happen at the triage of issues. It may happen at the very end, but that is just a technical, all right, here's who we need to talk to. Who do you want us to talk to? Who don't you want us to talk to? All of those technical things, and making sure that we have invited the people to participate who need to participate, and we don't exclude anybody. And there'll be times where for the volunteer companies, we may have to meet at night, which is fine. We do all that, but that's what the triage of issues starts with that, and then what happens at the end of that first 3 days or so is we have a brief meeting and say, look, here are the hot potatoes, if there are any. Here's our first thought. Now we're going to go back and see that. As I said in the earlier presentation, you might not agree with everything. You might not even like it, but when you see the last report, you're going to expect it, because we're going to keep you up to date as we find things.
Ms. Mitchell has a question.
Well, my point of my thought is that the fact that we're sitting here in this table, in this room, the county council looked at this morning, it sounds like there was consensus there. The fact that we have agreed on the firm to look at this, what we're looking at will come a little bit later. But we certainly have a group of people from my reading that has the expertise across the board, from which book to pull off the shelf to which page to turn to, and making sure that it gets back on the shelf in the same way. The mediation piece of it at the end, I think, could be very valuable. I think probably throughout. But that we've agreed to split that cost, that we're sitting here is further than we've ever been since I've been aware of the issue. And I think that that's a great sign of the cooperation that the mayor was talking about, and where we're headed with this. I think, unfortunately, politics always plays into anything to do with money. But the fact that the county and the city are both putting in money into this project, this is not just the city paying for the study to say, see, we were right. We're both going into this as a partnership, and what comes out of that is wholly owned by both of us. And so we have that ownership in that number, and it's going to be politically very hard to say, yeah, we got the number, we're not going to do anything with it from either side. Not impossible, but difficult. So that's my take on it, and I'm ready to move forward with it.
Okay, any other questions?
No, I mean, I think it's time to move forward, and hopefully we can move things along.
I agree. If you have both sides that are willing to split it and work on it, I think that's the start from the very beginning. So I think that it's a conscious way of just saying that, you know, we're ready to do this and get on with it. So I have nothing else.
So we have consensus, it sounds
I was
like.
just going to ask you, is your methodology question answered by the
Yes.
consultant?
Yeah, I'm okay.
So your methodology, if I may, I'm still trying to be clear. Your methodology is to use the GIS system that the county has to determine the calls for service.
Yes,
In
and
each of the
and
corporations.
we can fact check it with our own system, but just to make sure, and basically to provide validation, as the council president said, that more likely than not, if you're sophisticated enough to present this now, it's probably very close to where it needs to be. We're going to have to add in the parts that the county has not done yet to do this, but yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to use the mathematical models for how much is the call worth? How many calls can we expect? What's the fair number? And it's again, the choice of believing that is going to become after we submit the report and see who's in whose hands. We've all known dealing with these subjects. There are people who won't sign their own stay of execution, and we just won't make happy. And hopefully, that's the very end of each side of the equation. But the people who are consciously into getting there from here, we will be able to give you the information to allow you to reach your citizens.
Dr. Cohen, you said you've met with the county council?
Yes.
Okay, my question is, how does the county value the service of the Salisbury City Fire Department? I mean, that would give me a better understanding of the money too, you know, how they decided to make this.
Me too.
Yeah.
We didn't get there.
You didn't get
That
there?
was not
That's what
part
this
of our
is all
initial
about.
meeting.
You didn't get there?
No, it was exactly what we're talking about here
Okay.
today. It was
That's
just
the
an
answer
hour
to
or
the
two
question.
ago.
Dr. Cohen, thank you very much for your
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
presentation.
Thank everybody for their for allowing us to come and present this, and I hope that you find that we're worthy of your trust. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, sir.
For the record, we do have consensus. Okay. Mr. Lennox? Mr. Lennox.
One more person. There you go. Thank you.
Consensus to move forward, you have to take a vote?
No, it's not worth it.
Go.
Just for the amendment.
Verbal consensus at the work session.
Okay.
Verbal consensus from all of
To
us?
For the
advance
amendment, yes.
the
Majority.
amendment, the budget amendment.
Okay. As long as the mayor's okay.
The one that's here on the last page of the.
Moves the budget amendment to the legislative session. We just all say, yeah, we are going to move forward.
Well, I'm going to abstain from agreeing to move it forward.
That's okay. Put that in the record. Okay. Mr. Lennox, you're up. Come join us.
You're in the hot seat.
It's
Thank
probably
you very
very
much.
warm right now.
I should note that for the record, the attendance of Mr. Tran, who's actually the petitioner in this matter. And
Hello, Mr. Tran, how are you?
All right, thank you very much.
I understand that in work session in December, when Gloria Smith is here as well, which is our lead planner in support of Planning and Zoning Commission, and I believe was part of your discussion in December.
Yes.
I've heard a little bit of background about some of the questions that were raised, and I'm here to try to address those in any way that you like.
All right, there are several questions. Here, didn't you have one?
I'm trying to remember what I said.
I think, if I might, if if I might, I think one of the issues was, by the way, did anyone else go down and take a look at the property in question? It's the building on that street.
Yeah.
Essentially. There was a question about we would have to do it by exception. Mr. Stevenson, is that correct?
Yes.
The, would you like me to make
Yes,
a
please.
sort of a run at what the
Yes.
petition was requesting? Mr. Tran had contacted us about this particular property, which, as I understand, he has under agreement, and inquired about the possibility of doing a flea market operation, indoor, perhaps some outdoor as well. You're in an area of light industrial, which is you all know perhaps probably better than I, that part of the city traditionally was fairly intense industrial at the time. And in our zoning it has continued that way. Traditionally, zoning here and in other communities have been very much compartmentalized, where you would have industrial one place, retail another, and residential somewhere else. We're starting to see some changes over time that would involve more of a mixed use. That was not anticipated by the city code, which, you know, goes back to the 80s. In looking at this, rather than addressing a map change, and that's potentially an option for us, it was decided to go ahead with what was considered to be sort of a less dramatic change, which is a text change to the code to allow for this particular use in the right location. Now, by its nature, the special exception says, generally speaking, it may be okay in a district. However, there's enough uncertainty that we want to see each particular location to make sure, whether it's issues of security or parking or access or appearance of the building, that those are issues that can be taken up, in this case, by the City Board of Zoning Appeals. So the process that's recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission to you is that you do a text change to light industrial that allows anyone in the district, not just Mr. Tran, not just this particular property, to make their pitch for this type of use. There are other special exceptions that are already written into the code. This one is for a definition of a flea market. So we might know from our own experience what we think it is, but we don't have a definition, so we said we need a definition. So that language is in front of you. So if you chose to support this, following, of course, a public hearing, you would be including a definition for the first time, and you would be allowing for it as a special exception use, which means that all of the questions having to do with the site and the building would be taken up through the public process, through the Board of Zoning Appeals. One of the issues that the Commission looked at, and staff, when we put the staff report together, is sort of an age-old problem with zoning. How do you do something that makes sense today and makes sense in the future? And those aren't always the same thing. So sometimes we reach the point where we say, we see in the future this part of the city being X, but it's not quite ready yet. So then you start to look at interim uses. And that's one of the supporting factors for planning and zoning in this case, in support of this request. And that was that this is the type of use which could put underutilized buildings in more of a mixed use category if they meet certain criteria, and in effect hold that until the market changes in the future. If something happens, if industry revisits downtown Salisbury, that's the thought. So rather than go in and do what has been, unfortunately, probably our process in the past, tear the building down and figure out what to do with it later, this holds the site, gives it an active use. And frankly, we don't have a whole lot of folks trying to get into that part of the neighborhood right now. And that was the reasoning for the Planning Commission's support.
I hear you. I thought I was okay until I got the change, the 2 pages today that actually had the correct code in there. There is nothing in that area, like what's described in those two?
Nothing.
Seriously, there's nothing. I mean, I drove up and down looking for a manufacturing slash warehouse, and there's nothing. So I guess I understand, and I understand, and I agree with the fact that I would concur with the recommendation. However, I raised the question, are we at that time when something should be done? Because if you look at it, I just can't, coming from a manufacturing and warehouse background, I just can't see that area the way it is currently supporting that kind of business.
Yeah,
Are you
and I,
thinking that whole area? Are you think that whole area shouldn't be light industrial rather than making a text amendment to the
No, but
light industrial that would be rezoned?
defining what's in the, this used to be heavy well, what they would consider to be heavy manufacturing.
But if it doesn't fit what's there now,
Right.
I'm just curious what your.
I don't.
how many, do we know how many properties in that area that we have that are underutilized or not being used at all? All of
Most
them,
of them,
pretty
yeah.
much,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, that's.
Well, I mean, you got
There's
there's some stuff
I mean,
in
there's
those
still
in
a couple things over there.
behind code enforcement. There's stuff there. There's
you've got
some
the
churches in there. You got
It's
Yeah. Worth mentioning a couple things that, a couple moving parts. I mean, you'll see construction this spring at Union Station, which isn't far away, which now there are plans, to include a liquor license there, instead of just a catering space, like an actual restaurant liquor license. There have been conversations about, in fact, there is a plan for development on the old, what was the hotel there?
oh god, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Thrift travel.
Thrift Travel.
Mhm.
Yep.
There's plans for that site as well. So
and that would fit without exception.
I
by
believe so. Yeah.
definition? Okay.
Yeah.
My point is that are we limiting ourselves?
That might be a different zone because that's on 13. That might be general commercial.
Yeah,
And the
back
block
side
by,
along
and the
the
block by the
railroad
railroad tracks would
is-
not.
because they're all still paying that fee.
Yeah, I mean, because Union Station, that's all in general commercial. I believe.
Right. Okay. So all right. Maybe my point may be moved. But I'm
We
just
can go
saying
back
we
and
need
look,
to-
obviously, at that whole area in more detail if you like. Clearly, there's a lot more going on than just this
Yeah.
proposal.
Yeah, and I think that was my main concern was, you answered most of the questions that I had. But I think my bigger concern was looking at the area as a whole and for the future, and what do we envision happening there? And is it something that, do we need to take a look at and decide to make some changes for that area?
Jumping on that and going to the next presentation on the downtown master plan, the new one.
Yeah.
I mean, I flipped through that. There's nothing sort of.
It gets close.
It gets close.
It gets real
It
close.
gets close
Doesn't
to
go over.
But it
It
doesn't,
doesn't go over without. It's like you won the showcase showdown.
Well,
But that, I mean, that's really my question is
Do we need the same thing for?
because, in all honesty, if we did what the master plan says, parking lot 10 gets used. Now we've got questions about that later on, but does that mean it displaces people who could be going over here into the new one? But that goes back to our original questions, which really weren't zoning questions. They were more questions are we stepping on the foot of the arts and entertainment district who have this already? Did we get questions answered from Mr. Boda about the amount of stuff that gets stolen from retail agencies that ends up in places like this? I mean, that's really, I reread the thing and I was like, that's very nice. It's very sweet, Mr. Lennox. I mean, you did that, but I'm not sure the questions were really answered from the work session.
I know one question that keeps swirling in my mind. I'm not sure if it was my question or somebody else's, but with the special exception, if we put this in the text and do a text amendment in light industrial, that applies to all light industrial areas.
Yes, it
We're
does.
looking at one area and
Right.
saying,
Mhm.
yes, even if we say, yes, we agree that this is suitable here, it may not be somewhere else. But when they come for special exception, that just goes to planning commission, correct? That doesn't come back to the city,
It goes to the Board of Zoning
or
Appeals.
Board of Zoning Appeals, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
yes, I mean, but it wouldn't come back
No.
to us to see whether it fit in, but they would be looking at our comp plan and where we were heading in order to make that decision, correct?
They could avail themselves of this opportunity anywhere in the light industrial district. If they
By
could
special
meet,
exception.
Oh,
though,
sure,
So
so
it
if
would have
they-
to be an application made.
sure, they make application, they have a public hearing, and they demonstrate parking access, those sorts of issues.
Right, but when BZA is making that decision,
Mm-hmm.
are they looking at what we have in mind for the particular light industrial zone that applicant is asking for then? Not where we originally said, yes, this is one we made it for.
You're right, it's tricky with light industrial, that applies both up in what we consider the industrial park, as well as the older downtown area.
Is it possible to do something similar to what we do with daycares, where it's by special exception, but they have to have approval from the council?
You could write it as an ordinance permit.
I think that was the question. I don't know if that's something
Yeah,
we
you
want to
could.
do. That was just a question. It was out
I'm
there.
not sure that that's something you want to do either.
Probably not.
But that
curious.
that opportunity is there. Frankly, if I had my way, I would take the daycares out of ordinance permit, but
I
they're
would
there.
too. I don't think they need to do that. State law. Isn't it?
Sure. I think probably what you're heading towards, if I understand the sentiment, is to recognize that this area is different than the industrial park.
That's what I was trying to, that's an area that needs significant help.
Sure.
How can we do it
Gotcha.
without putting ourselves in a
where it
position
goes.
where, right, very good.
If your mind is to maybe allow this if they can meet certain site criteria
Mhm.
in this area, but not allow it further north.
Mhm.
Is that the thought? Then we can
That's-
try. Then we can
that's just a
work to
question
try
right
to.
now.
Right. That's a question. We can
Right.
work to try to sort that out.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that was the main sticking point, was that it could end up anywhere
that's-
if we do the text amendment. And while we may agree that this is a good spot, any light industrial zone may not be.
Could I seek some guidance for just a second?
Sure.
For Northwood, what's light industrial? I'll get a little bit confused by some of the districts. Northwood,
Quite a bit of the area along Northwood Drive, the industrial park itself is further back.
the industrial park district is different.
It's
So,
a separate district.
but the area off Northwood, any other places?
Yes, there's an area around, the railroad around Brown Street. Near the fire station, this light industrial. Over near the civic center, the plant that's being vacated,
It's light industrial.
there's light industrial.
Does this particular section have another designation, like, not downtown district, we were just discussing whether it's in or out, I think it's just out. That we could say, like, in the downtown, light industrial within this area.
Yeah, we could, and just thinking as I'm listening, we could separate out those districts and say that their goals are different. What happens in Northwood, what happens here. We could define an overlay district downtown where it's eligible. And we could have you look at those lines.
You're the zoning.
Well,
agent.
Is it in the historic district over there?
I'm sorry?
That's not in the historic.
It's not in the city historic district,
State means-
but there are some state controls in parts of it that we've run against up to before.
We have an opportunity, if you'll recall, in the FY16 budget we funded some changes to zoning, and we specified certain districts: 13 corridor, 50 corridor, and downtown. I would call this part of the 13 corridor, even the 50 corridor. I mean, given its proximity to each, I would say this falls right in there. So if as part of that contract we wanted to address this particular process issue, even if it meant finding a near-term solution to addressing the proposal, and then a longer-term better solution through a contract, we could certainly do that.
Yeah,
and make
I
that
think
part
we
of the
better
scope.
define
That would-
where we
Does
want
that
it.
make sense?
Yeah.
Would that be okay with you guys? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I think
We're gonna
it
change
kind of,
these.
you know, we just got to make sure it's on our radar for the, you know, near
Yeah.
future
Yeah.
to address it because it's going to affect, you know, not just right now, but 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
If I could ask a real life business question. Mr. Tran has a contract on the property,
yes.
and he would need some guidance from you.
Very quickly. It's running up
Can
against the
I-
end of that.
Could I ask that question?
Sure.
Mr. Tran, your property is currently under contract?
Yes, under contract, and we have option expire already 2 days ago, but we on the process now to negotiate for extension. And we went through a lot of uncertainty about the date and time, so we can get on the council agenda. So we don't know whether we should push very hard, or they could ask us to put more money into the project before we get somewhere. So that's why we really appreciate it somehow we get an indication from the mayor and from also from the council what direction we should move forward now. And because we right now we're very much in limbo about whether we should move forward or we end up we end up contract right there. Because they're gonna ask us to put pay the taxes and also more money, 5,000 non-refundable deposit. We have no problem with that if the project move forward. But because as far as I know, after let's say the council give us an indication tonight, and we appreciate it, whether or not yes or no, we still have some more process. And it's not and we don't know about further process what going on either. So that's why that I truly appreciate that somehow it's our first experience in the city. So we appreciate give us some indication that how we have to move from here.
Okay.
Because is in limbo on our end right now. And if you don't mind, give me a few more minutes of your time. I agree that we don't want to take away, we don't compete with what they are doing next door to us. Because right now the flea market, across the street, they rent a book for $5 or $10. We compete against them. They don't compete against us. That's number one. Also, the flea market under existing zoning right now, we do it on a short term, maybe 5 years or maybe 10 years. We don't know how long it takes. And we don't want to take the existing zoning away because the existing zoning allows us to put office there in the future. So that's part of our future planning for this corners. We want to be part of city, so that's why that we want to. Let's put it this way: it's a good area. It's a depressed area. City depend on how city want to look into that. We want to move in there and do something, and let's find a short-term solution that we can live with that. So we can bring job to the city and and create job without too much losing our shirt, and then try to buy more land in front of George Street with zoning CC. So in the future we try to turn that at the back, the warehouse right now, the flea market into offices. In the front we put a hotel right in front of it. That's what our future planning.
Okay.
So that's just to let you know that how we see the thing. We're not in business here to steal away the business from someone else or try to compete with someone else in the city. We just try to work and with the city here. And so again, I just added to the discussion and hoping that that my input will help the city to make decision.
Okay. Can we ask for a solution to come up with a solution that's the best for us that sort of protects Northwood somehow?
We can work on that.
And then because I think the feeling, let me just check, is the feeling that we should have him go in there or let him be able to get into that facility, but not compromise anything else?
That's kind of that's how I feel. And
Mine was the exact same as the way we were last time. Because we can,
Yeah.
doesn't always mean that we should. And I think that we've gotten in trouble historically because we have. Well, you can.
No,
You're just going to change a couple words in the
This is
thing.
an opportunity though for us to get somebody
In there.
I'm not saying that there's an opportunity. I'm not saying that. I don't know if I agree, and I'm not disagreeing whether or not it's absolutely necessary that somebody go in there right now. If there was a larger plan, knowing what's coming up the street, and knowing what's coming up in the presentation that comes after this one. I mean, there's knowing the differences that the mayor is going to be asking about the whole Route 13 corridor. I'm going to say it this way, and I don't know how to say it without sounding like it's going to sound.
You want me to
So, yeah, I should write it and let you say it. I should.
I might be saying the same thing.
We have
too,
not
so-
decided what to do with the bricks. 2 blocks down. And that's going on a decade of actually being in front of people. You know, we're gonna again, it's gonna sound we're gonna have charrettes with everybody about what they want downtown, but not a charrette with the people who own places in that area. Yet we will, not yet we will, but we are tonight looking at a text amendment simply because someone has come to us to ask us for a text amendment. So I'm not sure whether or not we really know what is the future of that particular corridor. Has anybody spoken to the Knorr brothers? And if you're going to get a liquor license and you're going to create a restaurant, which is great news, it's new news. How are somebody who's going to dump $250,000 into? I don't know, because the restaurants and stuff on Main Street do just fine with the flea market that's there
True.
over the
Yeah.
weekends. I mean,
Well,
but
I mean, if I may,
You go,
I mean,
help me. Finish my sentences for me.
I
You're
spoke
about
to Mr. Tran a couple weeks ago, and he called, and I spoke to the mayor as well. You know, and I think this is, and he spoke about his future plans, as he mentioned, with the hotel and everything, and basically, and he'll verify. You know, basically, what I told him was, you know, as long as your plans for what you want to do in that area fit in with our plans for our vision for our city,
Yeah.
I have no problem working with them. And if maybe what this is the flea market is a test, just to make sure that, you know, if it works for a few years and we have a good working relationship, we can go to the next level. And I'm grateful that he's willing to come into an area that needs some business and needs some help. So I'm going to say I'm supportive of this and willing to move forward and to give them a chance and let's try something and let's move forward in it and see, and if it works, then we go to the next level. And if our visions are on the same course, I am hopeful we can take an area of town that has struggled for many years and turn it into something very special, along with what we're doing with everything else. So I don't know if that
God, he's on Mr. Mayor, and I looked up.
Yeah,
It's gonna happen for a long time.
I
It's all right.
I just looked up by accident. I'm
Mayor's
so
Day.
sorry.
Mayor Day.
I still spin around when somebody says the mayor's here.
Where?
I look for the tall guy.
You had a comment.
Yeah, well, I think Mr. Bowden just summed it up really well.
Yeah, I
but
think he did.
and Mr. Ireton too, I think addressed the critical question here is this is a property that's really close to a lot of very visible things that we want to develop plans for. You know, the railroad corridor, Route 13, Route 50, the connection between downtown and the park, downtown itself. All these are really kind of critical to our economic future. These are really critical pieces. We want to get them just right. If I'm thinking about the immediate step for this site only, an amendment that allows the flea market in the light industrial district, especially if it's just restricted to this area, makes a lot of sense. The longer vision about does it become a hotel, things like that, that's even more critical that we get that right. So, I mean, because we've had hotels on properties very nearby that have been huge problems and headaches for taller mayors than I. And I think, so the question would be, do we take it one step and allow to see what happens, or do we throw up our hands and let anything happen? And I think that interim step might be acceptable. And so long as we don't change the zoning to general commercial and allow something like a hotel right now, because we're not sure.
Right.
I don't think we know in this
It's one
room.
step at a time, and
We're ready for that.
and
that's
That's what I was trying to get
yeah,
Sorry.
and that's why I think the more narrow definition about where this could be,
Yes.
not just light industrial all over, is appropriate for this. Mr. Tran said that this is an interim plan. He wants to see what happens there, and as we have the Moore brothers and others coming in and looking at properties in that area and what can we do and all these things, and people coming to the restaurant or whatever they end up putting in there, seeing something happening there is better than seeing
See
empty
nothing.
buildings. We're more likely to come back, and the more we do, the more will come.
Okay. So
That's
we,
something we wanna see is constructive and productive.
Can I try to summarize what I think?
What I think I heard.
What I think we're advising.
Let's hear it.
it's always a good thing.
Let's hear it, Jack.
What do you think we said?
Can I stall for a little while? Let's see, I think that you've advised Mr. Tran that you welcome his investment in the community. You welcome investment in the Church Street area, that you are willing to move ahead and advertise, willing to move ahead with first reading. In the interim, the mayor and his staff will be charged with trying to determine language that might direct this more towards the immediate area. I would suggest in that context that the public hearing be at your second meeting, so that you get a chance to see that language, see if you're comfortable with it. Then we go to the hearing and find out what the public thinks. From a scheduling standpoint, I would imagine you could introduce that pretty quickly. Mr. Tran will probably still need to negotiate an extension. We will have a bigger gap between the first and the second reading because we won't advertise the hearing date first. So we can work with him to figure out how much time he will need in his business arrangement. If that timing works for him, we'll go ahead with the advertisement for the council agenda.
I
Sounds
think you did a great job.
Didn't need the stall.
Very good.
You probably could have just said that before we had the conversation.
Okay, so we will move forward based on what Mr. Lennox just
It's
described.
over for you.
And can you summarize that, please, Mr. President?
Certainly. It'll be in your desk in the morning. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tran. Yes.
Once again, I really appreciate that the mayors and the city councilmen invited back today. And I appreciate the decision today. I fully agree with the decision that you agreed tonight. And let's try and let's see how things work. And it's a 5-year plan, 10-year plan. We want to see. And when the city, move forward, we move forward along too. And the idea is, we try to do something that is both the city's property.
Thank you. Who's behind you?
I think maybe somebody unplugged the computer and the TV came
Well, we're watching football.
on.
Didn't we turn
Thank
it
you,
on?
Mr. Tran.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you, sir.
Did you need it? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think
Sports Center?
guess that's what they were watching.
It's about time.
Cut that out of the.
ESPN 3 in HD.
Breaking news. Do we know why that's
what they
happening?
do.
Pete Rose won the whole thing.
No.
Yeah,
Seriously?
he just said, yeah.
Cincinnati.
Is it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
All right.
Oh, maybe he did the Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, you're up.
All right, so if you'll take a look at the screen behind you, you can see
The
that
AFC
strategy
championship.
for defending Julian Edelman includes.
So versatile, Mayor. I tell you. Very good.
For everyone who's watching at home.
Jumped
I'll tell you what.
from video source.
All right. So, okay. So tonight we begin to have a conversation about what's been a multi-year process that began under Mayor Ireton, and we're trying to get wrapped up. And this is the a downtown master planning process, and it's not the city's first. And we hope that it's a sustaining one. One of the hallmarks of the successful cities and downtowns is the ones that stick to their plans. And if you look back to, 1965,
Yes.
81, 2001, I think Mr. Lennox
We'd be done now.
can do a better job talking about those than I can.
Jack was in grade school.
We ignored a lot of the recommendations.
In '85.
I was born. Come on.
In '65? No, Jack was in.
Oh yeah. No, if you look back, you can see that a lot of those recommendations were long ignored. And if you look over the past few years, quite a few of them have finally been implemented, and you're going to see the fruits of that labor on the downtown Main Street and North Division Street portions very, very soon. So I want to do 5 things tonight. One, I want to talk about the history of this process. Jack is going to talk a little bit about downtown planning for Salisbury. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the ways that we can incorporate this and the ways that we can use this conceptual plan. Want to talk about what this is and what it isn't, and then we can kind of go into the last phase where we'll just walk through it. Ask specific questions, come up with specific questions we have for the faculty and students and consultants, and move forward. So history of this process. The Envision Salisbury Plan, as you know, for those of you who are on council, we had a partnership with the University of Maryland School of Architecture, and they have now called that partnership the Partnership for Action Learning and Sustainability. It's funded by the Provost of the University of Maryland and the Comptroller's Office of the University System of Maryland. The partnership that they've created is managed through the National Center for Smart Growth Research and Education, which is housed at the University of Maryland School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation. And we were what you'd call the Alpha program. And then they actually named it, branded it, and then went to Frederick, and that Frederick was treated as the pilot, but really we were the pilot, and Frederick got the beta program, and now it's off and running. They've worked in College Park, Annapolis, and they're getting ready to next work in Howard County, to really in Columbia. The county of Howard County, though, is their partner. So the project included a number of things. It included in February a workshop in what was then a vacant firehouse in downtown Salisbury. You can see some pictures here. It included an all-day workshop, charrette, and even tours around downtown Salisbury. You'll see some people you recognize in that picture in the upper right-hand corner. And then we moved into a phase of design and research. They looked at all of the past downtown planning processes that I know Jack's going to talk a little bit about. But they moved through the process looking at our geography, looking at our demographics, looking at who lives downtown, who works downtown, who shops downtown, what exists, what had existed, and what could exist in the future. And then began to engage the public in the design process, and came back every month and would come to Third Fridays, pin up drawings, and then the public was invited into Parker Place in downtown, and even City Council chambers a couple times to pin up drawings, and we solicited feedback from the public through the students would have Post-it notes and pens, and you would annotate the drawings and write what you liked and what you didn't like, and there are all sorts of some very nice comments and some not so nice comments, and some things like you must change this, and they'd come back and change something, and you could see if you watched it kind of an iterative process that developed over time. and there were even trips to College Park and trips back down here. They came down here multiple times and made these pinups and for feedback. And ultimately, the idea was to get to a place where there was a plan that was a conceptual plan for Salisbury. Now, before we talk about the history of downtown planning and where this fits in, the last thing I just wanted to add before I invite Jack to make some comments is that the way I see this is as a, what it is a conceptual implementation document. It's something for us to make choices from, almost a menu of what's appropriate at this time and what should be, the first steps and the second steps and the third steps and the fourth steps in the urban core of the city. And now you'll see, and you've already seen, that it, downtown has metastasized beyond downtown, but that's because the linkages are really important. You look at what Route 50 and Route 13 and Carroll and Mill Street did to this city. I mean, it separated the people from the downtown. And again, downtowns are not a neighborhood like anything else. It's the center. And it's not, it doesn't mean somebody who lives downtown is more important or gets to vote more times than somebody who doesn't live downtown. Downtown is just the center. It's the heart of your community, and it should belong to everybody. So that's why it's kind of got this, I think, important sort of role as being the center of our life. I see this not as a chapter of the comprehensive plan, and I think Jack's the person who can best speak to that, but it's a guidebook to help inform our decisions about our CIP, our decisions about what we say when we have a developer who proposes something on a parking lot, and what we say when we're trying to make choices about drawing things from the CIP into the budget, and what makes sense in this order and what doesn't, and then having to justify it when we're making a decision that doesn't align neatly with the plan. So it's a roadmap. It's conceptual. It's schematic. The numbers, I would say, cautious of the numbers as we go through, and they're really they're as well formed as the drawings. They're all conceptual and they don't dictate anything. Doesn't mean that's the investment we have to make. It also doesn't mean that somebody on private property has to make that investment. We have a code that does that, but it gives us a guidebook to make our decisions. So, Jack, do you mind speaking to the history a little bit?
Oh, it depends on how far back he's going to go.
Hold on. I can go to 65.
No,
There you
no,
go.
let's not go that far. It'll depress us. Why don't we just take your pretty pictures and move forward?
I think that we should just take that guidance and move forward. I think what we know from the past, and I have to acknowledge what is, as a traditionally trained policy person, and that's really where my sort of background in planning comes. When you ask me to look at all this stuff and figure out the process, it doesn't take me too long to come back and tell you what I think the process is. I could never have envisioned some of the things that those students did.
Yeah.
That's true. The time, and I only made one trip with the former city council president up to College Park, but it was really dramatic, and I had no concept how you were going to take all of these ideas, and I'm not saying all good ideas, because there was some crazy stuff up there, and how that was, and they were contradictory things. Even when you agreed that this is really good and this looks really good, you realized those are two different ideas for the exact same place. So to see how this process was going to work to try to sort out some of these concepts I was really interested to see what this would look like. I think in the end, back to the process, this is consistent with your comprehensive plans.
Yeah.
It's an outgrowth of all of those plans through the years, but hopefully a difference would be that this shows something exciting. This shows something that helps people to imagine how this might happen, because one big link that we've always missed, and it's not just Salisbury, it's not just what Comico, it really is virtually, I'd say almost every community I've ever been involved with directly, is that you can see in the end maybe what you want to be, but you don't know how to get there. You don't have a strategy for how to get there. If you're out in the county, you're saying, that's great, we have all this green area, how are we going to keep it green? No, we're not quite sure. how do we want to get downtown to be the center for everything that we want it to be? So there are some things in here that you will have absolutely no control over, and that's okay. A lot of it's privately driven. So one of my cautions to the mayor has been, don't make it an element of the comprehensive plan. Don't do that which is going to dictate and tie your hands, but do it as something to help implement the plan. So you need to have it adopted. You need, as the mayor said, as a general guide for the sorts of things we may want. On the other hand, I have a feeling things are going to change very quickly in Salisbury, and probably things that even these students didn't imagine. But if you bring this back out to the community, if that's the plan, and get their input, and have some general guidance on this, I think it's going to help us get where we've always wanted to be. It follows the comprehensive plans.
Does that, Mr. Council President, I just, could we get an update of where we are on parking lot number 1, so that this is wonderful, and you know the thousands of hours of work that went into it. What I was hoping for, this kind of reminds me of what we went through with the fire service thing a little while ago. I've already seen that. I already saw that first plan that the fire, the chief office did a year and a half ago. I've seen these. I haven't seen it in this particular presentation. I was looking for guidance from you all as to what you want us to do first. What is first on the table? What is, if it's property you need us to consider buying, is it something's got to get this ball moving? And if it's parking lot number 1, can we get an update on that? Or if it's something that's coming up in the budget process, I want to live long enough to see some of this stuff. And it's the doingness that I want to get to. It was the doingness that I feel was that I was always beingness through 6 years, but the doing it, the opening of something new. When we got to small victories, I mean, we partied for days when some of this stuff opened downtown because we were like, something's happening. So if we could get an update on parking lot number 1, to the extent that you can tell us.
I can give you a couple things.
Okay, good.
One, I can tell you how, in my mind, this fits into the process. I mean, I pulled this screen up because it's got goals and objectives from our comprehensive plan, and the fact that this first page of objectives talks about the role of Main Street and the downtown corridor and downtown and the urban center of Salisbury and biking trails and open space and historically and culturally significant places. I mean, the fact that all these things are part of the core of not just our downtown objectives, but our citywide objectives is pretty critical to me. So I look at that comprehensive plan as, the broad, that's the 10 years. This gives us the district plan. What I intend to send you in, I think your next work session is, your next work session is the capital improvement plan, which will include starting to swipe at this list.
Okay.
Starting to cut, this long list of things we need to do, and starting to say, here's what I want.
Let me ask just a quick question. Jack says don't put it as an addendum, put it underneath. Is the reason why people haven't done what all the other studies throughout the last 70 years was because they weren't required to? And my question is, why aren't we requiring it? I mean, it's just one of those things where if you want them to do it, you got to make them do it, because obviously they haven't over the past 70 years.
I think what Jack pointed out is part of it. It's part of it's private driven. So when somebody owns a property, you can't say you have to build this here. It's gonna, we can say what our vision is, and what we'd like to see here, and show us your plans. But I think part of it's private.
Then conversely, if you can't make them do it, and I agree with you, you can't make them do it, then if this is the property and we want this big thing on it, then we be out there trying to get that property. I mean, we look, one of the charrette pictures is
we already have properties that we own that we want. So at the moment, there's no point in us going out trying to get property when we've got all these wonderful parking lots.
Correct, but if we want that in the property that we own, we have to say that has to go on that property. that we own if you're going to develop. And I'm not. I'm sorry. I thought Muir was looking at the picture that's up there. He is not.
Oh,
he is looking at a different picture.
I'm always on another page.
But if
Sorry.
Muir's on a really pretty picture page, if you want that on one of the pieces of property that we own, then we have to write it into the agreement that you have to do it there. I mean, that's.
And
I think
and
you're
again,
right. If
part of it is the developer has to be in line with our vision for the city and how we see the city. So
then how do we do that without codifying?
And there's a great
find the right
example.
partners.
There's a great example on lot 1 and 11. We required that they meet the revitalization goals
Yeah, that's true.
articulated
We did.
in the 2012 plan.
Yeah.
So I mean, so we could certainly say that. Well, according to our plan adopted by the city council, whether or not it's an extension of the comprehensive plan, it has to go through the state review process and all that. Regardless, we could say that because of that, on lot 1, what we expect to see is this mixed-use development that achieves these goals, and we expect you, Mr. or Mrs. Developer, to meet those goals. If you want the property, it's that simple.
Yeah.
There are things in this plan that personally I could not support tonight. And look at some of the drawings, look at some of the plans, and just go, I really don't see this happening, and I would not want to codify that.
I agree with that.
They just are. And so it's possible, to get to a direct question, that if we have certain things that we know we want, sure, let's try to find a way to write that in and require it. But these are concepts out there, and some of the architecturals, for example,
Yeah, it's like,
I can't.
what I envisioned was just
Sure.
like going to the PAC meeting and seeing the variance of the weight of the signs. Are we in the Grand Canyon?
Sure.
Or are we in Seattle? Or are we in New York City? Those are the kinds of things, and that'll be answered, obviously, during the branding. The one thing that I think is the difference, because if you look at some of these goals, read the 1965 goals and objectives. The difference between the success of a plan is someone who's going to implement it and make sure that it gets done. But I would also like to add that while we're thinking of all these things, anything that requires public investment, we have to be very careful, and it has to be part of the equation in order to fund without putting us in a bad situation with our indebtedness.
Right, and this plan in no way suggests that we need to do anything that would put us.
That's exactly right.
So, but it's also a potential roadmap versus no roadmap.
No roadmap.
I mean, I could come to you every single year with the CIP and just put whatever, and I might, and you can say no. Right? I mean, I could do that, but this gives us a roadmap.
But wait, let me put it to you. My feeling has always been, because as a past legislator and then the executive and then a legislator again, everybody wants to be the person who's the tightest with the dollar. We're going to cut this. This is cut. Some of this stuff are big picture things that transform our city that we have to be visionaries in order to do. I have found, God, here we go. I'm writing this stuff for you so you can say it. That the incrementalist approach to the legislators that I have worked with in the past, and that's going all the way back, there were very few who sat at the table and said, if you want this to happen, you're gonna have to make this big investment. And I don't mean an investment of a $250,000 bond. I mean a huge investment. And people run for office telling people, I'm going to be tight with your dollar. I'm not going to spend.
Are you directing that?
No, I can't. No, because it wasn't in
I hope
any.
not. I
It
hope
was
not.
in. It was in none of your campaign stuff.
No.
But if you want something big like this to happen, we either have to require that someone build something that we say that if they're gonna build it on public, or we're gonna have to step out and make a larger. It's either in the arts. It may be surrounding an arts and entertainment, an arts an arts venue. I mean, we may have to look at property that we have to buy. This is 70 years. We can make it much faster if we decide to be visionaries. And that means having to spend money. And politically, over the last 35 years, spending money is just it's difficult. Besides you know what we do? We go through budget things and we look at boots and we do thorough things.
This is 20 years. So if you'll stick around with me for 5 terms, then we'll all get it done.
Well,
I don't
65,
We'll
so
get it
toward
done.
to the end of
Yeah,
this.
I
That's
Yeah,
think it's safe to
Your
say-
daughter will be in middle school.
I think it's safe to
So,
say,
I
over
wanna
the
see another
last
Sunday.
couple of years,
Yeah.
In his class.
Yeah.
we have spent where we need to spend.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I agree with
And
you
I don't-
totally.
Yeah.
That every budget is something we could all have been proud of. But I'm saying that when you take a look at what the larger cities are doing, they are saying in order to get this jump started to be the big thing that we want, either it comes from the state or the state offers the low interest or zero interest loans, or they go to the bond market. Now it's been hard. It would be very hard for us to do something huge with the wastewater treatment plant sitting there. But there are ways to do it. And I applaud the mayor's broad look at this. At the same time, he is looking at exactly where the bike lane is. He's looking where the bike is parked at this point. That's how thorough he's been in this plan. But I would say if we're going to do this with him, we really, I believe, should sit down and look at the catalyst project. Which one of these things is the catalyst project?
And it's
If it's 500 Riverside, because I know that's sitting in here. If it's the Arts and Entertainment Center, what I don't want us to do is to get bogged down in, let's say it's those 2 buildings on Market Street, because this has happened before in every one of these plans going all the way back, is that they had the vision, and when it said this piece of property, one person stood up and said, "Oh no," and then everybody folded. And literally, when you take a look at all the way back to Rudat and all the rest of it, and you look at that Market Street corridor, none of that was done. I know you're smiling at me because I'm the one who talks about this stuff everywhere I go. You get to do the pretty pictures. I have to bring up the historical crap. If you look at Market Street all the way from Route 13 all the way to where it curves around, none of what was suggested by some of the most brilliant people who have worked in this city and come into the city was ever done. Because one person stood up and said, you can't spend that money buying that property. We want to buy 2 buildings for $200,000 that over 20 years is going to bring us $20 million back. We have to start looking that way. But we know that there will be those voices in the community that come in and go, you can't spend taxpayer money that way. And that's not going to get this job done. And I really want to do this with you more than anything else in the whole world. So I'm hoping you will I've got to run, but I really hope you bring us the Catalyst project and say, this is the one that jumpstarts everything.
And before you go, and you couldn't be more right. And it will be so
That's
easy.
on PAC 14, right?
It will be so easy to say, let's not do, some small project because one voice doesn't like, out there in the community doesn't like one little thing. And now around this table, we can build a plan that we feel great about.
Right.
But, what we've got is a plan that thousands of people had a hand in. And that's the cool thing, I think. That's the powerful thing. And so around this table, I think we can easily come together on, at least acknowledging the people that, spoke up, the people that participated and said about their downtown, they wanted to do X, Y, and Z, and we can make it happen, and we can follow the list of catalytic projects. And I think there's a lot of them, not just one. Although I think you're right. That one little retailer that goes in somewhere is worth celebrating for days.
Isn't it though?
Because it's a great thing.
Did.
It's a great thing. But I think
there were
you're
very few of us who believed in it.
That's true.
For
That's
many
right.
years.
That's true.
and here
We're
it
still
is.
here.
That's right. So it's a pretty powerful opportunity to embrace what the community has identified as their priorities. When there were conflicts between ridiculous and less ridiculous on a site. They identified that they wanted the ridiculous, and okay, so you can get the ridiculous, and that's what's in the plan, and we'll try to implement it. So it's a cool moment, and as long as we are willing to have the courage to implement the plan, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think that this is very similar to what I said with the fire agreement, or with the study for that, in that we had everybody at the table that wanted to come. We opened that meeting up, it was public, and we had a lot of people there. It was cold, not as cold as today. When you started talking about walking through this with you, I was getting a little worried, but we had a lot of people there. We had public buy-in, we had input, and when Jim's right, this is 20-year plan. That's 5 elections. 5 times for people to say, we're not going to spend the money on this. This is ridiculous. But every dime that we put in, or the public puts in, or the private industry puts in, and does some of this, every one of those people that were there get more and more emboldened to stand up to that person that says we're not going to spend that, and say, oh yes we are, because we said this is what we want and this is what we're going to do, and see, here it is. Here's what we're doing. Here's where we're going, and this is where we want to be, and let's go. And those people don't get into office when they do, when they say, we're not going to do what you said you wanted us to do. Hopefully, we continue on that plan. Does it get tweaked? Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are things, but the discussion, the question that I brought up in the agenda meeting was very much along those lines: is do we adopt it or don't we? Because if we don't, then you are subject to changes of every political cycle. Because 4 years at a time, it could go any which way. But if you do, then you're locked into it. So I believe what was suggested was doing it, council adopting it, but not as part of the comprehensive plan.
Council and mayor.
Mayor and council,
Mayor
right,
and
adopting it, but not
Sure.
as part of the comprehensive plan that has to go through the whole state process. Correct?
And also, when you have a proponent come in that's got something you like, and I have to look at this document that we acknowledge already is not, we're not entirely comfortable with it, and say, I'm sorry, sir, we'd like to have you come in the city, but it's not in accordance with the comprehensive plan.
Right.
It needs
There's
to have
no
more,
latitude.
I'm not sure where this comment's quite gonna go, but
I don't know. 2 people
buildings-
said I was right tonight.
2
God knows what you'll
buildings
get.
in downtown in the last 20 years?
Mhm.
Two.
Two.
2 new buildings.
Yeah.
No.
Two.
The last one you talked to. So I'm going to
I thought
give
it
you
was
one.
Mr.
Dr. Finnegan?
So-
Dr. Finnegan's
So
building
the
with 2
new
of them.
construction on those 2, according to the records that you all looked at, I
Yeah.
thought was 75.
Okay.
Jesus.
So
So-
since 75,
I was
40 years.
in 40 years, there have been 2 buildings
Yeah.
in downtown, both built by the government.
Yeah.
So somehow, I think what you're talking about, and I'm just using your own words, the catalyst, is you're trying to figure out how to be a good catalyst for the private investment that has never come here. And it isn't that they didn't come here because we didn't hold them to a plan. We didn't do something that made downtown a place they want to be. They didn't put up, and I won't use a bad word, crummy looking buildings. They didn't put up any buildings.
And I think that's the key. If we have, once the first one comes,
Absolutely.
I'm gonna
Mhm.
the 20-year plan may start to shrink, because once there's a catalyst, once there's
Produce dividends.
once something they see it coming, people just like the North
Buy
End.
into it. They buy
You know,
into it.
I mean,
They
when
buy into it.
Walmart opened up on the North End,
Yes.
everybody wanted to be on the north end of town.
Mhm.
I think the same thing's gonna happen downtown. You get one key stakeholder coming in.
Everybody
And as
want
that
to
fills
buy
up,
in.
Yeah.
it ripples out.
Everybody
And
want
we
to buy
have-
in.
And you all, not me actually, you all were the ones who put in place those incentives that mirrored the ones that went up. I mean, they weren't the exact same incentives, but those ones that moved everybody, up north.
Mhm.
But your comprehensive plan, as we drew it,
Yes.
drew the circle and said we're not going any further.
Mhm.
So until the donut holes, this is the place to go, because we know the square footage to develop, the square footage to rent is cheaper than anywhere else out there. So now I want to see the CIP. I'm ready to stay and just go right through it to budget time, finish it up for the year.
It'll be fun.
Well, we'll get to that.
Move on to the tax differential.
Move on.
Can I answer his question on lot 1 and 11,
Sure.
Sure.
please?
Oh.
Yeah.
Forgot to
Lots 1 and 11. So we had a recent meeting with Mr. Gillis and Mr. Becker. You were there for the entire meeting, so you could probably determine what is shareable and what's not. But I will say the package that was put together, that you put together to take up to our legislators to talk about a state investment in the economic development through our downtown, we're just refining that package to reflect the new proposals. They've got new drawings. They've hired architects. They're moving forward.
They're spending money.
They're spending money, which is new
Which
compared
means
to our
that we're
previous.
closer to a shovel in the ground because they're spending money.
So
And
do you
the
want
tests, yes.
to mention the test?
Sure, I mean, we closed the parking lot.
We closed the parking lots and they're doing environmental tests phase. So they're doing
The borings.
sonar right now and then borings.
That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah.
To determine what's there, and there was a records review.
Sure, we found the contracts from 1963 that the federal government was unbelievably detailed. We have wage rates that were required. They have all kinds of provisions for removal of tanks, foundations. We know there are a lot of things down there over the years. We're hoping they left with the buildings. According to the contracts, they should have.
Right.
So, and then 2 years later, or 66 maybe, G&B oversaw the contract to build the parking lot. The paper trail looks good. We'll find out what happens with the tests yesterday.
So what that potentially means is that it will be less costly to build out lower level like parking garage and things like that than we have feared at times even in the recent weeks. And then let's bear in mind, so that's lots 1 and 11. That's under contract. We're working forward on that. The lot 30 is under negotiations. That was entered into in October, maybe into an ENP. The marina is out to bid, the marina property, and that will come to council as soon as we have a proposal that we're comfortable with. And we can keep rolling with this if we're successful. If we're seeing success and if it fits with the plan, we can keep rolling. We've got a few other parcels that we own. And so we can continue to make that forward progress. It is the removal of one barrier to development. Instead of having high cost of land, we can have very low cost of land and say, look, that's one incentive. We can't do much. We're not going to sit here and give you cash, but it's one incentive that we can provide to encourage this revitalization to continue.
And I think Vera's right. There's no question that once you get a seed, it'll sprout very quickly. Because people will see a return on their investment, and then you'll say, all right, someone believes, and the more people that believe, the faster it'll come.
Well, I'll tell you already, I think there's tremendous value, and people do believe enough, because you've looked at the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a steady increase in activity, a steady increase in investment, small buildings being owned, buildings being leased, changing hands from an owner who's sat on a building for 20 years to someone who starts investing in it. And, these things happen slowly, but I think they're ramping up. I think they've been ramping up.
And they see that we can bring the people downtown, especially with
With
Third
the events.
Friday shows, and you can bring 2,000 people downtown on a
5-6
Third
years
Friday.
of Third Fridays, it's been great.
Great.
So I don't know if at this point, given that we've gone over, if it would be of value to kind of scroll through or not. You tell me.
I've been through it.
I think
Okay.
we're good.
I've
I
been through
did
it.
have one question. Are you still doing edits in it?
So
Pretty much.
we can ask them to. I mean, the students are no longer even students.
Right.
They're
The only reason is things like Headquarters Live and River's Edge still have when it's done kind of comments in it, and in some places on 2 different places on the page, or one page and the next page it says when it's done and the next one says it's done.
No.
So we just want to align those kind of things.
Would
like
we-
River's Edge being
if we're going to ask for edits, and we certainly can, whatever council prefers, would we like to encourage that it be brought up to date to today, sort of, or okay?
I
So
think when we
here's
adopted it should be
language to
Yeah.
reflect
Right.
the time of adoption.
Current
Mhm.
time.
as best as possible.
Yes, we do.
Mhm.
Yes, we do.
Let's keep it in their hands.
We'll keep it in. Yep. We will keep it in the partnership's hands at Partnership for Action Learning and Sustainability. Garrett Knapp, who came down for that first event with the students from the National Center for Smart Growth. I'm sure would be willing to come here for the adoption. The faculty, I'm sure, from University of Maryland would be very excited to do that too. It would probably be the first adopted plan for their process. They changed how their process, and instead of having 2 studios in Frederick like they did with us, they had about 35 classes, and it's going to get bigger and bigger, and they're planning on putting almost 100 courses in Howard County for that effort. So, I mean, they've got a lot of resources, but we were the first beneficiaries of that process. Okay, so for headquarters live, I mean, for example, like that's a rendering from the previous
Right.
design of that.
Yeah, I
We
wondered
can
about
certainly
this.
update that. We could probably put
That one.
finished drawing there.
Yeah.
We could put that is
It's never going to be finished.
what?
It really won't.
Yeah, you have
That's-
to draw a line
We'll
somewhere.
always be doing this.
No, you're right.
No, but where
At the time of
but where
At
it
adoption.
the time of adoption.
where it conflicts, yeah,
Sure.
no, like headquarters, one place it says it's done and open, and the other says when it's done,
Sure.
or it's under renovation.
Sure.
And
I like the movies up there.
the
Yeah.
River's Edge is now in the Arts and Entertainment District.
I think they called this one the fan
That's the
favorite.
one I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They called this the fan favorite,
The river looks good too.
right?
Yeah. it
So
does.
that's where the buildings that Jim was talking about. That's where this is, right where they are.
They do open air movies like that in Little Italy.
Really?
Yeah, where I was walking
On the
with my
building
son.
side, like that.
Yeah, I mean they put it up on the side of a building. They put up a screen and show in the summer.
Love
Talked
it.
about doing that down
We need to
on
do
the
that.
Moore property, down by where the old theater was,
That'd be
Yeah.
nice.
showing them up on the side of the.
Yeah, absolutely.
State's attorney's
They
building.
had a huge
Yeah.
turnout.
Yeah.
Before it was the state's attorney.
Oh.
Is there anything in particular that you wanted to highlight for us?
I mean, we can.
50.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
highlight.
a
not
big
necessarily-
gesture. We'll call that a significant gesture. There it is. Treating Route 50 as more of 2 urban streets and less of 1 highway, creating a block in
New
the middle,
buildings.
and conjoining Church and westbound, right? Church and eastbound, and Broad and westbound into 1 street in each direction instead of 2 highway directions and service roads, which would pull the Newtown and downtown neighborhoods closer together. Significant gesture, though. Significant pedestrian bridges. The one that architecturally I had the most curiosity about was the performing arts venue,
Yeah.
the guiding light. Not that it isn't interesting. This again was the fan favorite. Let's see. You can see the River's Edge project shown there. The circle up there, which is actually, there's the 2002 drawings for it, created for the city, which also shows a pedestrian bridge there, which was also included in the plan, is also included in the plan, a pedestrian bridge there. Some things just don't go away. In the 1965 plan, one of the first recommendations was you need a trolley connecting your downtown and Salisbury College, Salisbury State Teachers College, or whatever it was. Normal school. It must have been. And in '81 in the Root ad, it mentioned something similar to that. It only took
Such a good idea.
50 years, 49 years.
Good ideas don't usually change. They just
The medical education building or medical school or whatever it ends up being is shown there. I think that's pretty significant. The linkage between, there it is. The linkage between, rail trail linkage between downtown and Salisbury University, and really ultimately connecting the Canal Park Drive, where the rail trail stops from near Fruitland Walmart, and where it stops at the northern terminus, all the way to Delmar potentially. Is shown.
We still can't get to the zoo.
and then getting to the zoo this is actually a recommended project
Yes.
between the park and downtown, the Hinge Environmental Research and Exhibition Center. I think it's Hinge piece. Who's Hinge?
I
Yeah.
Come on.
The late Dr. Hinge. I mean, obviously. And a number of different connection mechanisms that they show, such as one in the grotto between between the park and downtown, might not be ideal. But there are other potential connections shown. And then even into Newtown, you see around Lemon Hill some proposed improvements. This is always slow to load. There it is. Even significant improvements to the Parsons retirement home, all drawing that whole development all the way out to 50, including some of the assisted living development and retirement community and sort of a more walkable aging in place style. And then ultimately the North Prong, significant improvements. The students, one of their inputs was the North Prong plan that was developed in 2009 maybe. And so all the elements of that plan were accessible to them. And you can tell when looking at the two that pieces of that were incorporated, and then other pieces were reflective of their conversations since then, with the public. Community Culinary Center. And that sits in a park that actually is a floodable park, according to their drawings. So
Does it float?
it does not float, but it's kind of on pilings. And one of the aspects of that park, I wonder if we can't get in the northwest corner up there, number 14. One of the aspects of that park is that there's kind of river walk and marsh, and the river walk moves from a bulkheaded condition to a non-bulkheaded condition, more marshy, that can flood in times of flooding. And frankly, this is one of our low-lying areas. As you know, Lake Street floods frequently. This would also, in each of this shows a condition on places like Lake Street and Burton Street and Cypress Street, condition that's more like downtown and less like the empty lots that it is now. And ultimately an extension of the development from the center out, inside out, instead of peripheral.
I'm impressed.
These students are very talented young people. And then again, the numbers are really just to give you a sense of the ratios, not even real numbers. It's kind of about the ratio of what a private investment is to a public investment. I mean, they didn't hire professional cost estimating firm or anything like that to assist them with this. So it's reflective of what do we think it would cost to build something about this big in terms of square feet of commercial, square feet of residential, and then ultimately what does the public think certain things will cost, for like park development, things like that. Also gives us a sense of how it would play out over time and what our piece might be versus private sector versus our county, state, and federal partners. You can see that the bulk of the recommendations are private. They truly are private projects and affect private property. But if we don't know what we want, we're never going to be able to ask somebody else to give it to us.
You can't be mad at somebody for not giving you something you didn't ask for.
Well said. So, Mr. Council President, if I may, in terms of moving forward, if I may recommend, if there are specific edits, changes, things you'd like to see, we could take that list. We can even work within the funds that we have for consultants, for planning, and pay the students, hire the students to do some work. It would probably be very minimal expense because I doubt it would take very much time. But it also might be really useful to do some informational presentations in the downtown area and affected areas to say, here's the end product. Most of you all remember participating in the process, but here's the end product. And if there are some refinements or tweaks that come out of that, we can certainly try to incorporate those if we have someone who can help us come in and make those changes. And then, we can bring it to council as I think was suggested, and for adoption through resolution. So, if you want to schedule that out, or however you want to handle that, I think
How
we
long
can
do you think
accommodate.
you're going to need to get the edits done?
Well, I guess if we took some public input, I'd spend a month I wouldn't spend more time than that. I'd announce it soon and and spend some, public input is what created it. I don't think that we need to have public hearings necessarily or traditional public hearings, but I think we want to get some reflection and feedback.
I mean, are you thinking about putting it out like at the next third Friday as something?
That's a great idea.
And because that's when most of the people plan for third Friday anyway.
That's a great idea.
And,
we can absolutely.
And then from there, you're probably going to need another month or so to get anything added in. So what, 2 months to a work session?
I wouldn't even take that long. I'd say
Once you have the session.
Council meeting for March 14th.
Well, third Friday's.
Until the end of,
I think third Friday is
February.
one
Beginning
venue
of March.
for people
Yeah, I
to
mean,
kind of see it, flip through it,
yeah.
whatever, but an actual
it needs
presentation, I think, I would love to see it at Headquarters Live. That's where it started,
Mhm.
that's where
Mm.
we should present it,
that's a good idea.
and,
There's your
ha-
flagship.
do the whole presentation, talk about how
Yeah.
it happened and where it came from, and then you have that public buy-in that says, we're gonna do this.
I think that's great. We can pull that off. I think before the end of February.
Yeah.
And if we pull it off before the end of February, we can get changes and get it to you for your March
14th.
14th
That's fine.
work session.
Yeah.
Okay.
Make sure the bar's open.
Well, that's a council meeting. I had it
Council meeting.
adoption
It
by
does-
resolution
I don't
on
think
the
we need
14th.
that
Yeah.
work
Okay.
session.
Yeah, it doesn't have to
You
be.
didn't say it.
Come
Yeah,
back.
that's a council meeting, so it'll be adoption by resolution.
And we'll make sure you get any edits early and annotated in a
Yeah.
form.
No,
Yeah.
said you would have.
Thank you.
And just I think Jack brought up a good point. There are certain things and some things that are in there that just put some kind of, make sure the disclaimers that this is not,
Probably not
it's
realistic.
not every single thing is realistic.
Realistic, nor necessarily advisable. That
Right.
But
the
this is
Guiding
just an
Light
idea.
Performing Arts Center looked
Correct.
kind of like the
Right.
a prison, but.
It's got, yeah.
But I think that's okay. That it communicates what and it got a lot of positive feedback from the public, and for that
You
reason.
talking about the one with the movie screen?
No. The
Oh,
one,
I wouldn't
floating,
take
floating.
anything out.
no, and
Because that's part of the
I would feel
process.
inauthentic doing that because the public liked it,
Right.
and that's kind of that's what matters.
Somebody comes with a checkbook and they want to bill it, we'll talk.
There you
Let it go.
If it floods, it's on them. Sorry.
You're okay up to that.
No, I mean, they're gonna do something with that, obviously, it's gonna be on
Yeah.
stilts, they're not gonna plant it,
Yeah.
put it on the ground.
Floatable.
There you go.
It's
You're gonna put up a little
private money, they're gonna plan for it.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really good.
Thank you all. Get her done.
Stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good stuff.
Mr.
Good
Mayor.
job.
Thank you all.
Proud of you,
Appreciate
Bill, you left
And I'll
us
speak
off
for
the
Jim.
agenda.
What's that?
He's okay with moving it
Bill, you
forward
left
too.
us off the agenda, last night.
I knew somebody was gonna call me out.
I'll speak for Jim for the rest of the evening.
Everybody else got it, grab your list.
He wrote it down.
I went
Right.
first.
Good.
It's okay.
We understand.
Hi, Jim.
We do understand.
All right, the chief, where's the chief?
I messed up.
No.
She's outside.
Is she?
When you have
Let's
to
get the chief.
take and re-edit yours, that messes you up.
She's here.
They play
That's what I said,
basketball.
it was on the original one, I'm sure.
Their game on again?
There is. a
Yeah,
game
when we
on.
turn it off.
I think we do that. Well, that was a good game.
There's a lot of pom-poms behind your head.
Good evening, chief.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I apologize for the lateness.
The first item, I believe it's on your agenda, is a resolution to accept $27,000 from the United States Marshals. This is an annual sum that the Marshal Service provides for our 2 officers who are assigned to the regional task force. Correct. And this is for overtime funding.
Question?
Oh, I'm good.
Everybody good? Okay.
I just want to make sure that we, when it comes forward, and I don't see it in here, but just make sure that we do not name the officers.
No, I don't think it.
That I mean, a few years ago that happened one time, and I just want to make sure we don't.
I think that was in the Daily Times publication of salaries or something like that, because not in this that I would recall.
Okay. And you have another one?
Yes, the second one is to, for a resolution accepting $1,000 from Operation We Care. And that is to assist us in establishing our first explorer's post here at the agency.
Hopefully you bring this money.
Good thing.
I
Good
wish,
thing.
well, actually, Mr. Jeff Merritt would be more than happy to come and present the check to the next
Great.
I
council
think that
session.
would be nice.
Great
I think so, too.
organization and a lot of great.
Tremendous amount of
great
work,
things.
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
throughout the community
Yeah.
that he does. It would be nice to recognize him and his folks for
Definitely.
helping us out.
We can make that happen.
Maybe we can present something to them as well for their work.
Proclamation.
The contribution.
Or pass that on to the mayor.
Yeah, we'll get, there's the mayor.
Proclamation.
Proclamation for Operation
Write this
We Care.
down, and we're not gonna change it.
Say again?
I said, write it down, we're not gonna change it.
I could.
I know what we're doing. We got it.
Everybody's
No.
got it.
To change it.
No more,
No.
no more secrets.
For all that they
More
they
stuff
do
for
in
you
our
to do.
community and all that
Operation We
they've
Care.
done for the police department and continue to do, we
Mhm.
thought the check presentation and a proclamation.
And
for
a
them.
proclamation. You got it.
That's great. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Michael?
Good evening, all.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Thank you for waiting for us.
No problem. Got through some of my evaluations, checking them off the list.
See? There is good.
Productivity.
There it is.
Had to bring that up, didn't you?
What I'm here for tonight, packet, is the abandonment of Birch Street. We have to go through a process anytime we want to abandon a street. So what we did, this started with a discussion with the owners of 308 Lake Street. They acquired the parcel. If you look on your aerial, there's a parcel that's behind the beauty shop there, and he wants to try to develop that and access to that. If Birch Street had been originally built, it would have had the curbs and the sidewalks and everything, but this is frequently, and you get in some of these old developments where they had the smaller lots, they would lay these out, and Birch Street has just never had the need to be built out. So what he's looking at is trying to acquire, eventually trying to get some access through there. If you notice on the fire station, when they did develop that property, it kind of stops at the right-of-way line there. There's a structure, if you could kind of see a little square structure there right across from that, kind of where they had an old stormwater structure, and they didn't fully utilize that right-of-way that's in the street.
I remember this.
Basically, it has no real purpose to us. You've got Burton Street that provides that access between Cypress and Lake. The opportunities there for additional development of the vacant lot, as well as there'll be addition of land to the, because it was a car repair shop that's now owned by the bank. So there's an opportunity there. So there's a layout with a parcel breakdown in your packet that shows how the street is divided. When we abandon, half of it goes to one property out here. Of course, one half would go to the city through the fire department site, and then the other two would revert to the other owner. We did it where we broke those parcels out specifically so that the opportunity may come up where development of the back lot, they may be interested in what I call parcel D, but we'd have to go through a separate process where we surplus the property and go through. That's the second step. So we'd come back to council if there's an interest in doing that.
So this is, if you're looking at the fire department, the one that's to the left of it that runs between Cypress and Lake, right?
Yep.
It's just like a lane.
Yeah.
There's nothing there.
Nothing done with it. We'll preserve the easement to the stormwater pipe that feeds from Cypress to go down the lake and get over into the prom. So that'll preserve that right away for that. But thus, it's a paper street. It provides some opportunity for some development of property that's had some difficulties. So we saw it as a win-win.
to the right facing, isn't it?
What's it?
Isn't it to the right facing the fire department?
All time.
But I guess I'm looking at which,
The
kind of what
annual
street
city
she's
lot
on.
parking lot, it's to the right, not the left.
Yes, as you're
Yeah.
entering the parking lot from Cypress, it's on the right.
Okay, not the one I was thinking.
Okay. Yeah, the aerial
Yeah.
area gives you a good idea there.
I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, everybody good? Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Anything for the good of the order?
I have that budget amendment.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we can do it quickly. An ordinance of the city of Salisbury to amend the FY16 general fund budget to appropriate funding for New Year's Eve. We received donations in the amount of $7,500. We'd be increasing the budget by $7,500 in donations and increasing the general fund budget to show the same $7,500 donation.
So, yeah, donation.
Yeah.
We'll take it.
Okay.
We'll take it.
Thank you.
All right,
Laptops.
we can, if you want. Okay, I don't, I told you, I'm not gonna take a long stop for it, when it dies, and I'll get another one then.
I mean, is this something that we're trying to budget for, or like to put into the budget, or?
We are getting ready to have to enter the budget request, and not to say that can't be changed at your level, but at the mayor's level, I have to know what to enter.
I think
that's
at
one of them.
the last meeting or one of the meetings we briefly talked about it, and I think there was he going to price some stuff out
He
to
did.
see
He did.
did he get some ideas
Yeah,
on?
you should have a copy of it.
I did just send to
Oh,
you.
just
because
us?
I
Oh,
thought we were
okay.
gonna discuss
Oh.
it tomorrow, but that's,
The Surface threes were the whole package with the case and keyboard and everything were $999,000, and the tablets with the screen that folds back so it could sit in a tent form. If you wanted to use it as a, it's a laptop. I'm sorry. If you want to use it as a tablet, the screen will fold back over the other way. Those were about $1,200. I believe.
Okay.
So there's about $200 difference between the two for them. He said that the laptops and they were both spec'd out to last for the 4 years. What's happening with these is the fans are going in them, and it's more expensive to replace them, so they overheat and shut down.
Yeah.
Mine just did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, hers did, and it took me an hour and a half to download the. I couldn't even get it to download at home, but I'll stick with it until it dies, and then at that point,
But we need to put something.
But if they want to put it in the budget just in case it does die.
There was so little difference between the two. Maybe what we do is just put in the $1,200 per, and then when we need them, we do them. If there's something left, then it's left.
Well, I mean,
we
if
don't
it,
have to get them right away.
I mean,
but they
if
have
it
to be in there when we need them.
if it goes out on me, I'll holler at you. But you can put it in there just in case.
I can get through another year if I use an iPad.
Yeah. I mean, I might do the same. I mean, I'm in the market for one of those. So.
So budget for 3 then? That what?
Well,
Or you gonna do
probably.
4?
I mean,
5?
Let's say 4.
I'm in the market for an iPad anyway this year, so I may end up just using that as long as they don't have any issues security wise.
That's the one thing that we looked at when we got these, and why we got everybody the same was two things: making sure they only had to produce one packet that worked on everything, and the other thing is, which shouldn't be a problem if they put them out PDF, so it shouldn't be.
I just open it up in iBooks. I mean, that's
Yeah,
built in.
however you
So.
want to do it. But the other thing was the security, and Bill, we had the policy for that. Basically, if it's password
I
protected.
mean, it's the
Right.
same thing with the iPhone. So, because I downloaded it on my iPhone too, so that's my backup.
When we got
And this
these, we
is
got 10. There were some scattered about,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not doing a wholesale thing this time. We're just talking about council.
Council.
So I don't know how everybody else is holding up.
Yeah, I mean, mine's Going just fine. I don't know about yours, Mark.
No trouble.
Well, mine just showed me.
They don't get the use we
Right,
No,
exactly, we have our.
I use
our
mine for the
desktops.
meetings,
Right.
and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
The other thing, I sent out an email about East Salisbury Elementary doing it if I were council.
Oh, yeah,
instead of-
I'll put it out in
I'll look at my
churches
schedule and
and
let you
stuff.
know.
Yeah, about the scholarship, but
Yeah.
to see if you guys were on board with coming to East Salisbury on the 16th, 18th, sorry,
February 18th.
February
Oh, is
18th.
it?
Yeah, the one that came last time.
You sure you sent it to me? It's like I'm just.
I sent it all council.
The last thing I have is, the city is going over to, Jake is trying to get this look to be the same. And one of the areas is the email, on the bottom of the email, the signatures. There will be coming out a copy, because we haven't sent it out yet.
No, I haven't, no.
We need to do that, but
Okay.
I still have an issue with the copying the logo.
You can't do it, it won't,
I can't do it.
okay.
And I've tried a couple of ways. If I go to copy it, I copy the image and I put it on and I click paste in the signature thing, and it comes up with the, yeah.
Wonder if I
Probably have to
could
save it.
just.
I'm gonna bring it
Jake
in,
Higgins
I'm gonna
and
bring it in and
Jim.
see what we can do, because I think Chris can set it up, and I'll bring mine in first and get it set. Once it is set, we should follow what the city's doing, so that the signature looks the same. And it allows for Facebook, but it tells you where that goes in the signature, okay? And we'll get that out as soon as I can get Chris to fix mine, hopefully tomorrow, but we'll see.
To go along with sort of the branding, just to,
Right.
so that everything has a certain look and.
Right. Good. Nothing else? We're adjourned.